Did you know migraines, the most common neurological disorder, might be connected?
He goes on to say that there's a study that proves that migraines are directly tied to too much insulin or too much blood sugar, not enough insulin, and that it's a problem with always blood vessels dilating. But that's not exactly true. And while I do believe that a lot of the focus on migraines does lie in your food, there are some people who react to things like mascara, and that causes them a migraine. So let's talk about it a little more. A migraine is a change in blood flow in the brain that is severe enough to change blood pressure in the brain. That's what it is. It is not the headache. It's not the changes in your vision. It is not the nausea. It's none of those things. It is the change in blood flow. Period. End of story. That change in blood flow can either be a dilation of the blood vessels to bring more blood into the brain, or it can be a constriction of the blood vessels to shut blood flow off to the brain. And while I have no doubt that it can be related to food, I know for sure that it's not always a food thing. And he specifically says that one of the best ways to fix it is to change your diet and not eat carbs, like to cut them out of your diet. Well, I'm going to give you a different perspective. And I'm not arguing the research. There is a research article that he quotes there. What I'm saying is that that might be true for about 30% of people. But my bet is there's another 30% of people who actually have reactive hypoglycemia who only suffer a migraine when their blood sugar is really low. And those same people may have a migraine because their blood vessels are constricting, because they're trying to change things other places, because when blood sugar gets really low, people pass out. And you might ask, how do you know this? I'm your girl. I'm your girl that was doing that. I would literally go from being okay to having a blood sugar in the 40s in a 30-minute period, and I would get extremely nauseous and I would hit the floor. Lights out. Passing out is a hard reset. It's a reset of the entire system. It's trying to stabilize blood pressure, heart rate, breathing rate, blood sugar, all of it. It's a hard reset. Like doing a hard reset on your computer, it's a hard reset for the brain. The very first time this happened to me, I was in Misty Amaril's classroom in second grade at Miramoni Elementary School. And it happened a few times, and then we got some tests done. And it turns out that my 30-minute postprandial is not ideal. It actually happens to be pretty low. So at that time, my fasting glucose would run like in the 60s. And my postprandial would run in the 80s, which is what your fasting glucose should be. And my 2-hour postprandial would drop into the 40s. And it wasn't because of a high carb diet, because my family wasn't rich enough to afford those carbohydrates. This also continued all the way through until 2020. So I was born in the 70s. This continued all the way until 2020. And I can tell you that I switched in 2005 to essentially a paleo diet. And I did that because I was having some GI issues that I couldn't figure out. It turns out it was celiac. That first started presenting themselves back when I was probably in middle school, and didn't get diagnosed with celiac until 2012. So switching myself to a high protein diet, and the only carbs I was consuming were from fruits and vegetables, including when I was doing half iron distance triathlons, the migraines didn't stop. Now, if you've seen my other content, you might have seen a video where I talked about having triglycerides that were above 3,000. Me, as a half iron distance triathlete. So anybody that tells you it's about diet and exercise, you can tell them to bugger off, because it's not always about diet and exercise. It may be about over-exercising and overstressing the system and having too much inflammation, because I'm sure that's what mine was. But it's not always about not exercising enough and not having a clean enough diet, because when you're eating paleo, and you're working out 30 hours a week and you still have triglycerides above 3,000, it's not the diet and it's not the exercise. Well, it was the exercise. It was too much inflammation caused by the exercise. But that same inflammation can create the migraine, because that same inflammation allowed my homocysteine to get above 20. Above 20. And the only reason I know is because I went back and tracked it, and they took it when I got pregnant. I'm not sure why they took it when I got pregnant, but at the time that I got pregnant, I had 8 weeks before I got pregnant done a half Ironman triathlon. And my homocysteine was, I think in the test results, it was like 22. It shouldn't be above 7. Here's the other thing we know. People who have migraines are 60% more likely to have a stroke. Why? It's a change in blood flow. A change in blood flow. We now know that your cholesterol has very little to do with the change in blood flow and very little to do with your overall cardiovascular health. We know that. We know that there are perfectly healthy people with beautiful cholesterol levels that have heart attacks. So that's not the issue, right? It's not cholesterol. Can we all agree on that? It's homocysteine. Homocysteine specifically creates inflammation in the blood vessels. So if you're eating a diet that keeps you not insulin responsive and you're not exercising, you don't have enough muscle on your body, and you're not pulling insulin out of the blood or blood sugar out of the blood, you could end up with a migraine. Yes. But I bet you in that test, in that study, they didn't once test anyone's homocysteine. Also, I know plenty of type 1 diabetics that have never in their lifetime had a migraine. So it's not an insulin resistance issue all the time. I do believe it's a homocysteine issue. And again, in most places, most areas of the United States, if you walk into a lab and say, I don't have insurance, I would like to get my homocysteine checked, that test is going to be somewhere between $18 and $25. And here's the deal. Here's what your cardiologist, your family practice, your OBGYN for the women who aren't seeing a family practice, your urologist, or whoever it is that you see for your annual exam isn't telling you. The American Heart Association published in 1995, 2008, and 2012, 3 times they published research that shows that homocysteine on its own is more indicative of whether or not you will have a heart attack or a stroke in the next 5 years. So if you have homocysteine that's above 7 and you're getting migraines, we need to solve that problem for you. And while I do think eating a cleaner diet will help, I can tell you that for me, going paleo, my migraines became more frequent than they had been when I wasn't paleo. And I ate a pretty clean diet, but I still had the occasional piece of cake, cookie, candy bar, and those junk bars that a lot of endurance athletes eat. I had plenty of those. And my migraines were less frequent with that than they were when I was eating perfectly clean. Don't let people tell you why you're having your symptoms. Understand what's happening in your body and advocate for yourself.